Hi, welcome to this edition of Newspan Disabilities. I have Gregoire with me, who is the Impact Business Development Manager of Project Circleg, and we are going to learn more about it today. Project Circleg is an NGO which develops prosthetics and they are distributing manufacturing in Kenya right now. Gregory, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Farida, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting us here. And I look forward to providing some information regarding our project and how we can work together to raise awareness about disabilities.
So what made Project Circlet decide to be formed? I mean, who are the funders and why did you guys decide to start developing prosthetics and why in Kenya?
Absolutely. I think this is a very good question. The origins of the project are actually a research project by two students here in Zurich, in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm,
And they're both industrial designers, Simon and
mm-hmm,
Fabian, and they traveled to Kenya, where they were very much sensitized to people with disabilities, and notably people with lower limb disabilities, so amputations. And they realized that they didn't have access to adequate products. They also, on the same trip, realized that there was a pollution problem in Kenya. And they sort of came up with the idea to try to solve as many issues as possible, but also realistically, and
mm-hmm.
to develop, design, and engineer a product that could be environmentally friendly and also and could add social value. And this is how the actual project started. So it started in an academic environment, and then it grew out like a flower out of this academic environment. And right now we're a team of 6 people, 2 engineers, 2 industrial designers, 1 communication specialist, and 1 business development specialist. And that is the link with Kenya. So how are we structured? I think to explain more the link with Kenya, we are currently in Zurich. This is an
Hello.
early on in March. We unfortunately had a lot of delays with COVID, as you can imagine. This impacted us quite a lot.
Uh,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. So you were talking about some of the challenges you have had because of COVID.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a few delays because we wanted to do our pilot testing, which means that we test 20 products on people for an amount of time. We wanted to do that this year, but we had some delays because of COVID. And now this is going to happen in March, COVID allowing. Um, but you never know, that's the thing. But we're pushing in that direction. And the prototype is ready, and we've identified people for this. And so we're just eager to go on the ground and get our final feedback before we start industrialization.
So have you gotten any feedback so far? I mean, have you tried it on anybody?
Yeah. So one of the really core ideas and philosophy of the project is its user-centric design, which means that the feedback loop from the user is so important to us. And depending on where you are in the world, there are different uses every day of these circlegs, or of these prosthetics. So we actually test them here as well in Switzerland. So we have 2 people who we regularly test them every time we do an upgrade or a change, and in that way there's a constant improvement channel that's possible. And this has had for consequence of the development of our new prototype, which is Circleg Zero, and with which we we applied at the global competition Cybathlon. I don't know if you know it, where you're competing against other lower limb prosthetics on a parcours. It's international. And we have a very simple and reliable technology, which allows us to remain quite cheap as well. But because it's reliable, we are also very happy to see that our Andre, who tried Circleg Zero, won the competition, the world competition. So
Wow.
we're very happy about this outcome.
Yeah. But that's quite cool. So, so,
Yeah.
so do you just do lower limb prosthetics, or you do the hand prosthetics as well?
hmm So right now we're concentrating on lower limb prosthetics, and this is transfemoral, transtibial, or just foot. And so you can see 3 levels or 2 levels depending on the perspective. Um, we we're also only offering right now. We've developed it for the adult market, and in the future we will also integrate the service offering for children, because we want to cater to them as well. But as we are six, the product development takes a bit of time. The research and development, the more technical engineering related tasks. And yeah, this is why we start with the lower limb, we start with the adult, and then we move to the children. And maybe, who knows, let's see how the strategy evolves. But for now, we just do lower limb.
So for those of us who don't know that much about prosthetics, I mean, what makes a prosthetic leg efficient, or easy to use or comfortable for the user?
Yeah. Um, so as far as I've been involved in this, it's very important to have a leg which is specifically fitted to the needs and circumstances of the person using it. If it's not, it can be even dangerous for other parts of the body. It can be very heavy. It can lead to other biomechanical imbalances. And so we've developed one that is quite light if you compare it with competition, which is high tech. So it's been designed by engineers in Switzerland in collaboration with 7 universities, which allowed us to keep the research and development costs low, but at the same time have the same sort of input as a company per se, which has a lot of resources. And it's modular, which means that it can be aligned quite easily. Um, I think there's quite some difficulty. Um, if I go back to your question, what there are different aspects I think to consider when using a prosthetic, a lower limb. One is comfort, because if the leg is too heavy or if it hurts where the amputation has been, then we're probably not on the right path. Um, I think there's also clearly a dimension of functionality. That means it should allow people to go through their daily lives in a way which is considered more or less alleviated or normal per se, and would allow for just an easier everyday life. So this is what we really tried to develop. This is why it's light. This is why it's adjustable, why it's modular, why you can change some spare parts if there's issues. You don't have to change the whole prosthetic. So it's really thought with the user's needs center to the design.
Is it funky? Because these days you have prosthetic legs which are funky with all kinds of nice designs and
Yeah,
all those
exactly.
things. Yeah. So are you doing stuff like that as well? I mean, because
Yeah,
what I realized is that as an assistive technology user myself, because,
yeah,
because I use crutches,
yeah,
I like to spice up my crutches. So I get very nice papers and things to
yeah,
to wrap around the crutches and
yeah. Aesthetically pleasing.
yes, to keep it interesting. So
Yeah, yeah,
and and
exactly.
and I have a friend, Elizabeth, who is in Kenya, and she has the nicest prosthetic leg that I've ever seen. And I'm always so amazed by it. And
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to come to complement my answer and maybe finalize it, aesthetics is also a consideration. So the idea is, I mean, the Circleg, we want it to look cool. We want people to be proud to have it, proud to wear it, to show the world, or to design it how they want afterwards. So there are some ideas of personalization that we haven't really gone in too much detail that may happen, may not, but certainly the base model will be sexy, we can say. And that's a bit the idea that we want to give, because why should it be something else? It should look cool.
Yeah,
It's uplifting.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So my next question is about the cost, because I mean
Yeah,
we are in, let's face it, a lot of people with disabilities in our part of the world do not have money, because
yeah,
they they don't have access,
yeah,
they haven't entered the workforce, and
yeah,
most of the countries in Africa do not have a very good social
yeah,
welfare system. So I mean
yeah.
you could make the best product, but
Hmm.
once nobody can afford it, then it's just like a white elephant that
Yeah,
can be used. So what are your thoughts?
yeah,
What are the funding opportunities that
yeah.
you have, that you are engaging in to make
Well,
sure that
Farida, yeah, you really raise an important point, and cost and price, especially as they're two different things. Eh? As a financial manager, I keep a very tight eye on, and the recognition that in certain environments, poverty and disability and poverty are interlinked is something that needs to be recognized. And so um, it has, with, as you mentioned, some of its how do you say, some of its origins in access to the labor market, because actually mobility and freedom to move gives a lot of access. And this is something that we hold at heart. We really want a mobility, freedom of mobility for everyone. And this is one of our values. So how do we ensure we have the highest impact? How do we ensure we get the legs to as many people as possible? Well, first of all, we develop the leg. So I'm gonna talk about the costs and the price and sort of the philosophy and the questions that emerge and the tentative answers that sometimes we don't have a full answer, but there's definitely work in progress. So in terms of costs, um, developing a medical device has a cost and is generally quite high. And we managed to escape this because we worked with the collaboration with technical universities here in Switzerland. So in a way, the cost of development is not really, won't be represented that heavily in the total cost of the product. So this is very, very good to start with. Then you have operational costs that I have to integrate, and then you have material costs, and this depends on the availability. So for a product which is quite innovative and which is aligned with the principles of the circular economy, like us, and which uses post-consumer plastic or recycled plastic, um, in the ecosystem that we tap into and that we further develop, the maturity of the recycling ecosystem um, will determine our supply chain and will determine some of the material costs. But we try to keep the costs low on the research development side, on the material side, and on the operational side. How do we do that? Well, we produce in mass. So we're not going to produce 20 legs. We're going to produce, maybe the first year 5,000 and the year after that 50,000. So the idea is really to scale. And the business model, as you had some questions about it, is actually B2B, business to business, and we supply volumes. So let's say that an NGO in Kenya or a hospital or an orthopedic clinic puts in an order, and then we would supply them. And the second phase of development is with international relief organizations, and this will be a more global strategy and tailored also to conflict zones. But the initial strategy is factory in Kenya and distribution in the region. So we try to keep the costs low, but obviously these may vary. That's for sure. And actually, we it's not like we're selling a product to Europe where it would be very high margin. We are going for low margin, so we have to go for volume. We need to
Mm-hmm.
produce high volume. And so this is the business plan. Regarding the price, there are two prices. Well, in theory, because there's a chain until it gets to the end user. You see, we have the orthopedic technicians, and we'd be selling to them, and then they would possibly, through their own arrangements, but with our conditions, notably on the price cap, sell to the end user. So, but obviously we're looking at different mechanisms because we recognize that one of the biggest issues is the purchasing power of people. They cannot afford legs. And, even if I manage to develop a leg for a certain price, it could be that A, that person cannot afford it, or B, that person is not maybe willing to put that much money in there. So there are different instruments available. We're looking at microfinance, we're looking at micro leasing, we're looking at guarantors, we're looking at different ways of configurations, even with sort of new policy approaches, if there's a way to subsidize. So it's still work in motion, and we're involving a lot of stakeholders with our limited capacity. So in terms of cost, um, we're going as a target market. So you have to understand that there's a huge segment of, and I call it a market, but essentially they're people that have been underserved dramatically by the private sector. I call it market failure. Um, at the bottom of the pyramid, you have very, let's say, affordable technology, but it's really poor quality and low functionality. It's made of wood, it breaks. At the very top, you have very high tech, very expensive, but there's a whole segment there in the middle, which is completely neglected, and that's where we're going. The pricing strategy will depend also on the sales strategy, and is still in definition per se. I believe that we'll be successful in our pricing strategy to get to a maximum number of people, but this is still work in definition.
Can you give me an idea of the market size? Do you know how many approximately roughly? Mm.
So that's a good question. I mean, the market is itself dynamic, and there's a lot of information missing regarding this. So we have our own research where we're trying to validate market assumptions regarding size of the market, addressable market, and general characteristics linked to prices, supply chains, competition, etc. Um, and the size of the market, I mean, you have about 0.5 to 1% on average of the population which has a physical disability. Out of these, two-thirds live in rural areas. Then, yeah, depending on what you're offering, you have to look at if it's either children or adults. You have to look at who's in the market already. You have to see who has disposable income. So actually, an understanding of a very fragmented market is quite difficult to have, but we're still in the process of collecting information. It looks favorable to us enough to jump in and to make a difference.
Mm.
Um, but before us, bigger companies have tried to do that. Companies that have decided not to pursue this, but we go in and we do it ourselves because that we think the timing is right also.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I totally agree that the timing is right because there's a lot of interest in assistive technology, assistive clothing, adaptive clothing, and all these things these days. But I know you gave me a reason for Kenya, but I'm also thinking of other countries like Sierra Leone,
Yeah,
where because of the civil war there are a lot of amputees there
yeah,
because you know during the civil war the the rebels were actually
yeah,
going around amputating the limbs of people.
yeah.
There'll be a huge need for that in a country like that.
Yeah, Farida, you're absolutely right. And we're trying to take it one step at a time. So, we're not a traditional company because we don't just produce legs and sell them. We
Yeah.
produce legs locally, sustainably, and we also offer technical assistance. So it's kind of a whole package. And for us to be able to offer this sort of package, the ecosystem for recycling has to be at a certain level of maturity. The supply chains have to be relatively liquid, and there are a
Hmm.
lot of other considerations that we need and to work with and to work around to understand the risks, to have mitigation strategies. So the idea really is to start with the pilot, and the pilot is in Kenya, and we produce in Kenya and we distribute in Kenya and in the in the region, in the broader region. That would include Rwanda, for example, where there have been similar atrocities. That would include Tanzania, Uganda, but to come back to your point about Sierra Leone, I think you're absolutely right. We can't limit ourselves to one region. This is why we have an expansion strategy in place, not just an expansion of the type of products we're going to offer. That means we go from only adults to adults and children, but also when the model proves to be successful, and there are plans to expand to the other side of Africa, to Western Africa, and our our project has already been discussed with people very high up there,
Hmm.
but the consideration and the condition that we put was the maturity of the recycling ecosystem. And so we put them in touch with the Global Innovation Fund and with the Plastic Bank to see if they can kickstart something on that side. And then we'd walk in, but they're different approaches. So we don't take really the traditional approach. We're holistic. We try our model in Kenya and the region with the ambition to expand then to West Africa and after the world.
Why not? Because I think for me another thing that is exciting about your project is that you are using recycling recycled plastics, which is a menace for 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 us all across the world. So what how are you getting the material? I mean, are you in touch with local organizations which go around and collect the plastic waste
Yeah.
from the streets and all those things? I mean,
Mhm.
what the strategy for getting the raw material?
Yeah. I mean, the key here, I'd say, is really to have reliable partners for recycled plastic. So we don't collect the plastic. We work with partners who collect plastic, who wash it, who pelletize it, and then who act as suppliers. Um, and there's a whole ecosystem around them with people who pick up plastic, who bring it there, and who get paid for it. It's called social plastic per se. And this plastic is really readily available everywhere. And it's in everyone's interest to see it reprocessed in the chain. And we are actually signatories to the Circular Economy Switzerland initiative. And for us, integrating the principles of the circular economy and pushing for that ecosystem is also very important. So we can't solve every problem, and I think we're really going to try step by step. But there's also a shift in thinking that needs to happen with the current providers of products, which include medical devices. And we try to integrate local opportunities and local conditions directly in the business model, and hoping that this makes the difference.
Yeah. I think it would. I mean, because I always feel that when people feel as if they are part of the solution,
Yeah,
then they give their best to it as opposed to you bringing something to impose upon them.
exactly. And this is how we work,
Yeah.
ultimately.
So let's talk about sustainability because
Yeah,
um, there are concerns about the lifespan of the prosthetic device
yeah.
being less than 3 years and all those things. And honestly, I didn't know that until my friend told me that because I mean I use crutches and I've never had 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 to change my crutches. So I assume that prosthetic legs were also like that, but apparently they have a much shorter lifespan. So
Yeah.
what the average lifespan going to be for your prosthetic? I mean,
So the life cycle of our products, our products are designed with the user at the center, and engineered to resist. We're sort of building the Nokia, so robust, reliable, simple, but
okay,
we're building the
yeah,
Nokia of
yeah,
prosthetics for the lower limb.
yeah.
And for this, I mean, we can take a wild guess, but it's an educated guess, and it's based on testing. A leg would basically start some deterioration, and only some parts, not the whole leg. Probably after 3 or 4 years, we use a mixture of innovative application of materials that hasn't been done for this type of application before. I can't go into too many details because I'm not the engineer, but
Okay.
this is some of the insights. Of course, naturally, there will be some parts like a wear and tear, let's say, of your clothes or in an apartment or a home.
Yeah, yeah,
There's wear and tear of underneath, and
yeah.
some maybe linked to the knee. And this is actually easily replaceable. We built a prosthetic where you could just, like Fairphone or like other types of technologies, but not like much of the market, where you could just replace a part instead of buying a whole new other leg.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the advantages, really. Um, so what we are there's, as in every product, some wear and tear risk. Here we call it more disposables or consumables part, and this is, but we're making a fairly robust and reliable model. The core itself is intact, um, and parts can be replaced, so it's modular. Um, and in the end, we're going through a strict process of development because we're developing a medical device that is certified. And this means that there are load requirements, resistance, safety issues to be dealt with, and therefore we can ensure that in terms of sustainability that we offer a good which lasts a long time, and which spare parts can be replaced, which is really advantageous economically.
Okay. So I'm curious because if you give me a prosthetic and I'm a certain weight and I either lose or put on weight, will I have to change my 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 prosthetic? I mean, obviously you have a certain allowance which can still take that weight. And what is that? Because I mean,
Yeah, it's a good
people.
question.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So, Farida, we use these connectors, which are fairly standard in the industry. So you can connect different parts. You can connect our foot to a connector, which would be the same. They're fairly standardized, often produced by Ottobock or very similar copies. But the idea is really the interoperability of different systems. So it would depend on what connector you have, but as these ones are fairly standardized, yes, it would be possible to add on. but the integrity probably of the whole leg, if it's not all Circleg, would be different, I would say. But if the socket made of I think polypropylene, and there's a connector there, we can add to that. This is why we have different offerings. We have transfemoral, transtibial, or foot, and we can also make sales based on just separate parts.
Okay. I want. I'm sharing my screen. I want my viewers to see your website. Do
Yes.
you? Okay. 1 second.
Yep, I can see your screen.
Okay, great. So, are there any? I'm looking to see whether you have any pictures of samples that you have done on the site. Um,
Oh wait, sorry. Farid, do you mind repeating because it cut?
no, I want, I'm trying to see whether you have any pictures of your products that you can show the
Yeah,
user.
actually, it's a really good question. So the product that we're going to test in Kenya in March, you cannot see that one. However, what you can see is, let's say, a pre-version of that. And if you go in products, if you go at the top, you see the Circleg Zero. And
Okay.
here,
Yeah,
so
wow.
yeah, it's
It looks,
pretty, it's a bit sporty.
yeah,
It's
it
a
looks
bit of a
good.
different look, but this model, which is purely mechanical,
Mm-hmm.
um, allowed us to win the global competition,
Mm-hmm.
Cybathlon. So we're really happy. So we've moved from the proof of concept, obviously, to the proof of product. And if you go here, we've really worked on different aspects. For example, the swing back mechanism when you walk, the possibility to kneel, for example, to pray, or even to squat to go to the toilet, because
Yeah,
we don't think about these things, or most people do not, but
yeah.
it's difficult when you have to get a leg off and you're on one leg and you have to go to the toilet. So there are a lot of things that are considered in the design,
Mm-hmm.
but it will not look like this in the end, but it will be something, let's say, a bit similar.
But it's quite cool actually. I mean,
Yeah,
it is very sporty. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the final model we haven't yet shared with the public,
Mm-hmm.
and this will be done in the course of this year.
Okay.
And what you see here is sort of a pre-model.
Okay.
The first design was very cool looking. The
Okay.
second design, the major iterations were made by the engineers. So it created the medical device, and then it's the work of our designers and of the engineers together that we will create through industrialization. What's interesting with the website as well is um, we talk about the process. If you put your mouse, um, if you, wait, I'm just going to. So you see our team. You can see our team. You can,
Yeah.
um, and I think one of the strengths of our project is our team. We have a really nice team, and we have really complementary skills. That
Mm-hmm.
means there's no repetition. Everyone's different, but it works well like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Um, so this is really nice. And then on the about section, we have a little graph that shows you how we deal with sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if we go down a little bit, we go down, we scroll down, stop here, yeah. We just let it load down. And, or is it a bit lower? Do you see the circle? If we go down a little bit more, uh, okay. So it's either on the product page or on this page, and you see the entire life cycle of the material and how we use it. And if you go with your mouse over the circle, it tells you which different stages, what changes.
Is it on the product page?
Yeah, I think it could be on the product page.
Okay.
So if we go down a little bit, and maybe it's at the bottom there. So these are the different plastics that we reuse.
Okay.
They're re-engineered, reintegrated, and re-injected into the chain.
Okay.
And here you
Okay.
have the material cycle. So that's sort of linked to your questions about sustainability, because there are
Yeah.
two aspects. There's the input and the output. And actually, it's a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And here you
Production.
get an overview of
Then you get the
supply chain and
distribution,
waste management.
fixing and adjusting, use and repair,
Yeah.
and
And so,
return.
yeah,
Actually, the return is actually very interesting because most of us don't know what to do with our broken assistive devices. I mean, because I have a walker
yeah,
which the wheel got broken about a month ago.
yeah,
Yeah, I got it from a company in either Sweden or Denmark or one of those the Scandinavian countries. I forgot which one it was. But
yeah,
the battery stopped producing that model, so I can't get get a replacement wheel for it. So right now it's just there. It's useless.
yeah.
Uh,
You
uh,
can't
uh,
use it.
yeah, and so it's very interesting that you actually um, have a model that allows the people to bring back the broken part to be recycled again. And I think that is very important because as a as 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 a whole world, we are very bad with recycling. We need to do a lot better, and we waste a lot of stuff. It can be recycled, and it is killing our planet. And we need to change our attitude
Absolutely.
towards those
And
things.
with this philosophy, Farida, this is really the idea is we want to tap into an ecosystem and we want to further develop an ecosystem. And so the project is social and environmental.
Okay. Greg, thank you so much for telling us all about the Project Circleg. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we end the conversation?
It's been a real pleasure discussing about the project, and I really look forward to, because even when we raise an awareness for example, our project, we're also learning new things all the time. So I really want to thank you for your efforts in bringing people together and getting the information out there. So thank you so much, Farida.
Thank you so much too, and have, have a lovely day.
Have a lovely day too.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.